Hello, everybody. Justin Jackson here, and welcome to the msuwma podcast. In today's episode, I talked to Stephen Fox, founder of NextGen Financial Planning out of San Diego, California. Steve is a certified financial planner as well as an enrolled agent. If you don't know what an enrolled agent is, listen to this podcast and you'll find out. Stephen has an exciting and unique journey. Before he started NextGen, he spent 8 years as an active duty Marine, later going to San Diego State University, where he got a bachelor's degree in financial services. I really enjoyed hearing this story, and I think you will too. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Justin. I'm glad that you guys are doing this podcast. I think it's a great example of how to kind of take charge and do things that other people in your position, other students aren't really taking the initiative to take on. They can have great payoff for you over time and really do a lot to help out a lot of your peers.
Yeah, I think we're having a little bit of a first mover advantage right here. We're getting in with so many names. It's unbelievable. Just like the people we're able to get on and how many people want to help us out. It's probably just because we're the first ones to do it. So
yeah, I think I mentioned in message to you before, I wish that I had the initiative to do something like this when I was a student leading an FPA chapter in school. It would have been so helpful for a lot of reasons. So I'm glad to see that you're taking the mantle on this.
So first question is, what's in the water in San Diego? You, Taylor Schulte, Scott, Frank, I'm talking to you tomorrow. It seems like there's a lot of cool independents in San Diego. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there are a lot of great firms here. And I think that me being lucky enough to start in this career in this area has been a huge factor for me in being able to get to where I am so far in just a relatively few short years. That's in large part because of folks like that. So I feel like I got really lucky there. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's San Diego like? I'm from the Midwest. I think the furthest west I've been is Houston, Texas. So I haven't even been out to California yet.
I've been living here for about 13 and a half years now, something like that. I originally grew up in the Midwest too. I'm from near Chicago area. And I think I kind of ended up out here just by pure luck. I was an active duty Marine right after high school for about 8.5 years. And my last duty station was at a place called Camp Pendleton, which is just north of San Diego. So it's just totally luck that I got stationed there as my last duty station. And when I got out, I knew that I wanted to stay here. There was no reason for me to go back to Chicago, and I loved it out here. And I think even if I'd wanted to leave, the girl I was dating at the time, now my wife, wouldn't have gone for it anyway. So it's a good thing I liked it here.
Yeah. So do you mind sharing your journey a little bit, just leading up to being a financial advisor? That's kind of, a non-traditional path as far as just, it seems like most kids, get whatever degree and then some recruiter throws them at a job. That seems to be the traditional path. You've had a very different path. Do you mind sharing that story a little bit?
Yeah, I can go through. And I guess I'll go through it relatively quickly. And whatever areas you want me to elaborate on, feel free to ask. I'm happy to expand. So I think you're probably right that I do have a little bit of an atypical journey here. Most people that are working as financial planners seem to me to be one of two categories. Either they're doing it as a second career after having done something somewhat related, like maybe working in banking or corporate finance or something like that. And then maybe in their 40s, they get into a career in financial planning. And what seems to be increasing a lot more in recent years, which I love to see, is people getting into it right out of college. And part of the reason that's happening more is because there are more and more universities offering financial planning programs now, like the one that you're in and like the one that I went through at San Diego State. So I think that's those are probably two of the most common pathways. For me, it was a little bit different. So I was an active duty Marine right out of high school. I was in for about 8.5 years. Stayed in San Diego when I got out after that last duty station. I decided to go to San Diego State initially because, one, I just had the goal of getting a college degree in the first place. Nobody in my family had ever gone to college before. That had always been an important goal of mine. And I decided if I'm going to be in San Diego State's a great option, in part because they have a large veteran population there. So I felt like it would be good to be around a lot of people that I could more closely relate to. Being just a little bit older, having had different life experience than most young college students, I wanted to be around other people that I had more in common with, and they had a strong veteran population there. And I decided initially to study into their finance program, just because I'd always been interested in learning about finance and economics. And I figured if this is a field that I enjoy reading about, learning about, it would probably make a good career field for me. And that was really as much thought as I had put into the choice of what program I went to at that time. Almost nothing. But while I was there, I was at a meeting for a student group that they call Finance Investment Society, where they would bring in speakers that work in all different areas of finance. And one evening they had a guy come in who was talking about his work as a financial planner with individuals, families. And before he came in to talk to us, I didn't realize that career existed, that was a thing you could do.
Yeah.
Nobody in my family or nobody I'd ever known had worked with a financial planner before. And I just didn't realize that option even existed. So I feel very fortunate that not only did I happen to attend the evening that meeting and to hear that guy come in and share what he was doing with us, but I was also already at a university that happened to have one of the oldest and best financial planning programs in the country available to undergrads. So it was a pretty easy choice to switch over to the financial services major instead of the initial finance one, and to take the additional classes and the right sets of electives at that school to be able to take the CFP program right out of undergrad. I didn't have to do a separate graduate program or certificate or something. I could do it right out of undergrad as long as I did the extra classes. So I decided to do that right away. As soon as I heard that guy talk, it just immediately clicked in my head that I knew I wanted to be in this career field where not only am I getting the opportunity to apply finance and quantitative stuff, but also to help real people to have a meaningful impact on their lives, and using both sides of my brain and having a much greater impact than I could doing something like corporate finance or working as a fund analyst or whatever else I figured I would probably end up doing. So I immediately got involved with our student FPA chapter as well as the local San Diego FPA chapter. Started contacting every financial planner in town that would answer my calls or emails, and like harassing everybody to meet up with them and try and talk and learn as much as I could. And I kind of approached it from the perspective that, having been in the military first for 8 years, I was 26 years old when I started college, 29 when I graduated. I thought that I had some catching up to do. Like, I would look at guys that were my age that had that time going towards experience working in this field. And I thought to myself, okay, I need to catch up to those guys. They've got an 8-year head start on me. What can I do to get to where they are as quickly as possible? And that was a big driver for me. And surrounding myself with other people who were ahead of me, or who were where I wanted to be, was enormously helpful. And like you mentioned earlier, we have a fantastic community here in San Diego of local independent firms that were all very helpful, very happy to do whatever they could to help me. So it's kind of expanded from there. I feel like I got really lucky that I initially recognized that opportunity to go into this career field, and that I was in a location that enabled me to do so much more easily than a lot of other people might have had the opportunity to do so.
So what lessons do you think you learned from your time in the military that maybe other people might have missed out on by just, going into the business force, whatever, right out of college? Like, what do you think are some lessons that you took away that maybe set you apart, entering your career?
It's a good question. I think that there's a little bit more overlap in the skills that make for a good military career and the skills that make for a good financial planning career. I think there's more overlap there than a lot of people might initially expect. Mm-hmm. So I guess some of the first things that come to mind there would be, one, being in the military. One cool thing about it is you are working with people from a very wide range of backgrounds. You're working with guys that are from all over the country, all different types of households, different educational backgrounds, like everybody from like the valedictorian at a private high school over to like a former gang member, literally, that was like just in jail a month before he went to boot camp.
Wow.
And everybody in between. So you're a very wide range of people you're exposed to. And I think that I needed that exposure to different types of people to help me be better at empathizing with and communicating with a wide range of people, which has been very helpful as I've gotten started in this career in financial planning. Because again, you're dealing with not as wide a range, but still a pretty wide range of people and backgrounds and personalities and situations. And you're trying to do the best that you can to provide them with guidance to improve their lives. So you need to be able to communicate with people that are a lot different from yourself. So I guess that's the first thing that comes to mind. Some other things that kind of hopefully translate over from the military might be just having a strong work ethic. I think that's valuable almost anywhere. Lots of places you can develop that, but I think that that's where it sort of developed for me for the most part, was being able to have a clear view of what is the mission, what is the goal we're trying to accomplish, and is every action that I'm taking right now getting me closer to or further away from that primary objective. So having that kind of like driven, mission-oriented mindset has been helpful, I think. Maybe another thing has been traveling around the world some, has also further helped to increase my ability to communicate with people from different backgrounds and to understand different perspectives from mine a little bit better.
So would you say those are kind of the big rocks?
I think so, yeah. I think those are all areas that did translate over pretty well, even though like some of the skills that obviously don't translate at all, like being able to disassemble an M240 golf machine gun, that does nothing for me in my current job, right? Or being able to I spent some time working as a drill instructor, training new recruits. Like, I do not apply that management style now running a financial planning firm to the interns that I hire or financial planners I've hired, right? That just would not work at all. I can't just come in and screaming and flip a table and expect to get any good results. So some things don't translate over well at all, but a lot of things did pretty well.
So did you have any kind of natural interest in personal finance, like reading any Dave Ramsey books or anything like that while you were in the military?
Yeah, I did. And I think I spent probably way more time than most people on active duty do learning about investing and taxes and reviewing insurance coverages. I actually knew how to read an LES, which most people never looked at. An LES is a leave and earnings statement, basically a pay stub for military personnel. And most people have no idea how to read it. And it's really not that complicated. So I think, unfortunately, it's not very hard to be more advanced on that front than most of my peers were. But I think I was. Yeah, I'd always been interested in it.
So can you tell me a little bit about your firm? Like, how did you get to starting Next Gen Financial Planning? What was the transition from, going back to school and meeting people and actually starting your own company?
So I started it right out of school, right out of undergrad. I graduated in May of 2016, and the registration was approved in June of 2016. And then I took the CFP exam as soon as I could that July. And I'd been planning on starting my own firm for roughly a year and a half, 2 years before graduation. So
nice.
For me, it was a pretty easy decision. It felt like a natural fit, the obvious choice to go ahead and start out on my own. And the reasons for that were I'd always been kind of motivated by the idea of being responsible for my own success or failure. I'd worked in other small businesses that I'd started before that, totally unrelated to personal finance, but I knew that I liked being responsible for everything that goes well or doesn't go well. So that aspect was really important to me. I also knew that I wanted to be in a place where I would have the ability to do things in a way that I thought that they should be done. Instead of having to deal with lots of bureaucracy or get permission from people to do things, I just wanted to come up with an idea, try something, and let it fail or succeed, and then try the next thing. And
so does that have anything to do with your experience in the military? I mean, I can't imagine being an entrepreneur, those same qualities or take you as far in the military.
Yeah, I mean, as a sergeant in the Marines, like you have some ability to do things your way, but yeah, it's very bureaucratic, very rigid. There's not a whole lot of room for creativity or doing things your way there. So that was one thing that really appealed to me. I also knew that I wanted to work with clients who didn't really have access to financial planning services from a lot of other firms out there. So we work with younger clients. I think our median age is probably early 30s, something like that. And we don't have any minimum asset level to work with us. And we're a fee only. We don't want to collect any commissions for product sales and have that conflict of interest. And that combination of not selling products for commission and of working with younger clients as our primary focus, that's pretty unusual. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's one of the primary reasons why a lot of people come to us is they feel like we can better understand them than the firm that has all 70-year-old retirees that have $10 million and they're dealing with completely different financial issues, right? And those people don't get me wrong, retirees and wealthy people need financial planning help too, but there are already lots of options for them. Mm-hmm. And it's changing over the last few years, which is fantastic to see. But there still aren't really that many options that exist for younger people that haven't yet had the time to build up to the AUM minimums that a lot of firms have. And it's not just about investment level. Most firms talk about with theirs, right? So I'm not going to talk to a 30-year-old about Social Security strategies or Medicare planning or reverse mortgages or how to generate retirement income from a portfolio, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about things like student loan planning, which is a lot more complex than a lot of people realize, or things like how do you combine finances with a spouse when you first get married, or what financial planning considerations are there around things like getting married or having your first kid? How do we evaluate one job offer versus another? Does it make sense to go to grad school or not? Buying your first house, all those are the types of issues that we're dealing with. Maybe like tax planning around, like you have incentive stock options. What's the best way to do tax planning around those? So those are the kinds of issues that we're talking to clients about. And I think that's a lot more rewarding for me to be able to work with people that don't have access from a lot of other firms. And then also, if we work with people earlier on in their lives, we can have a much bigger impact. Like somebody who's 60, 70 years old, they're more or less already kind of set on their path financially. Right. Whereas if you get started with somebody earlier on, you could hopefully have a much bigger impact for them over time.
So you talked about compensation models, and I read a little bit about kind of your philosophy on your website. And you don't do AUM fees. Is that correct?
Correct. We just have a flat fee approach that covers both financial planning and investment management. And that
So,
works well for younger clients that can't yet meet the minimums of
mhm.
other firms. And also works well for clients that do have larger AUM amounts, because a flat fee structure usually ends up being less expensive for them than a percentage-based one.
So how do you recommend, I guess, new advisors, younger advisors, uh, wade through the compensation model debate? I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, we kind of get inundated with people who say fee only, blah 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 blah. Like, how do you make the decision to make sure you're the most ethical advisor that you can be?
I mean, I think for a young advisor in their first one or two positions in the industry, I'm not sure that it matters so much. I think
Mhm.
that the primary focus should be on, are you in a place that enables you to do the best work that you can for clients, and in a place that provides every opportunity for you to learn to be better at what you do, to continue to develop technical expertise and develop your communication skills with clients? Are you going to be in a place that has good support for you, instead of them just kicking you out and saying, go call hundreds of people until somebody says yes, and now they're a client, and then you learn how to deal with them? Are you in that kind of place? Or are you in a place where you're going to be actively engaged with a team that's there to help you grow and learn along the way? And that's more focused on education and on doing good work for clients than it is on sales. That's the way that I would approach it. I think that compensation structure matters, but it shouldn't be the primary consideration, especially
Okay.
early on in your career.
So as far as early jobs go, a lot of early jobs are sales roles. You still kind of had to do sales, right? As an
Yeah.
entrepreneur yourself, you still had to do it. You just did it your own way and in a more uh, whatever ethical, how your preferred compensation model, your preferred structure. I mean, what was kind of your thought process in that whole thing? Like, you probably, if you had what it takes to start your own firm, you probably could have jumped in and started selling whatever products out of the gates too, right?
Sure. Yeah, that was one of the things that scared me when I first started my firm, is like, even if I care a lot about doing good work for clients and answering their questions as best I can and having a good process to take them through and good technology, none of that matters if I don't have anybody that I'm actually working with, right?
Yeah.
Then there are two steps that you have to solve there. One is, how do you get prospects to talk to you, to be interested in you in the first place? How do you find each other? And then two is, are you able to convince that person to actually work with you? And that was what was one thing that scared me initially. And one thing that took me a couple of years before I started becoming a lot more confident in it. And these days, I actually really enjoy that aspect of this work. But I think it just takes repetition. It takes time. And one thing that can help you build up a lot more confidence there is knowing in your own mind that you are doing everything you can to be of meaningful value to the clients that you're trying to work with, right? If you believe in what you're selling, if you believe in the service that you're providing to people, it's much, much easier to do so. And sales doesn't have to be a scary thing. You don't have to feel like you're tricking somebody, like you're being slimy and trying to convince them to work with you. You just have to approach it from the perspective of, okay, I'm trying to do this thing to help this person. What information can I give them to help them make a better decision to decide to go ahead and work with me? And once you've done that enough times, and once you've outlined kind of a guide of how you like the conversation to go, what are the key points that you want to hit, once you learn things like that you need to do a lot more listening than you do speaking, and that you need to tailor your communication style to the person that you're talking to, as you get experience doing all those things, it becomes much more easy.
Yeah, and I think if you really do believe in what you're doing, and if you really do believe you're providing value, it shouldn't feel slimy. If
No.
you really believe, like, you don't feel like you're selling a widget that you don't really care about, and you're just trying to get the commission check. You do feel like you're like kind of evangelizing your service that really does help people.
Yep. And I think that that's why if I were in a firm in a position where I were primarily responsible for product sales, I would take that same kind of approach. I would learn absolutely everything I could about that type of insurance policy or annuity or mutual fund or whatever. Learn everything I could about that product. Who is it best for, under what circumstances? And then I would feel a lot more confident that I'm talking to the right people, and that if they agree to sign on, that I'm doing a good thing for them.
So let's talk about designations. So, earn licenses. I don't know what the correct term is, but you're a CFP and an enrolled agent. I assume basically everybody listening to this knows what a CFP is. But could you explain what an enrolled agent is?
Yeah, so enrolled agent is a designation from the IRS about taxes.
Hmm.
And most enrolled agents are working in one of two areas, either doing tax preparation for clients or doing representation for clients who are audited. And I have no interest in doing either one of those careers. I've done a little bit of tax prep work before, not really very interested in it. But the primary reason I became an enrolled agent was while I was still in school as a student. I think I was a junior or senior in school when I did that. And it was because I wanted to learn more about taxes. I think that taxes are one of the areas that clients have a lot of questions about. They have a big impact on their overall finances. And I didn't think the CFP program goes deep enough into taxes. So I was trying to think of ways that I could be forced to learn more about taxes, and then also to stay on top of it through continuing education credits every year. And that was the best idea I could come up with, was do that enrolled agent process. And another nice thing about it from the perspective of like somebody who's early in their career is that you don't have to have your degree completed yet, like you do for some designations. You don't have to have a certain number of years of experience. You don't have to be sponsored by a firm. You just go register and take the tests. And if you can put in the work and learn the information and pass the tests, then you're an enrolled agent. And so there are 3 exams to get there. The first exam is about individual taxes. The second one is about business taxes. And the third is about representation and ethics and kind of that side of things, Circular 230. So it was really the first one and a little bit the second one that I was most concerned with, the individual taxes primarily and a little bit the business taxes that I was most concerned with early on. And they're a little bit tough, but I think for anybody who's smart enough to make it through a CFP program, if you put in the work to prepare for those exams, you should be able to do it. It's not that hard.
So how long did it take you in comparison to the CFP exam?
So the first exam, I put in maybe a month or so of studying.
Like a month putting in 40 hours a week, or a month like on Friday you'd sit down for a couple hours?
I think it was probably the summer between my junior and senior year, around July, August. I put in about a month. I was working part-time during the summers, I was working full-time at a financial planning firm there for a team at MetLife. And so I think I was mostly studying evenings and weekends, not a whole lot, maybe 20 hours a week, something like that, for maybe about a month. And then I went and took that first exam, passed it on the first try, not too big of a problem. Second one kicked my butt. I had 0 experience with business taxes up to that point, almost 0 experience. And I think that the information is a lot harder. It's a little more complex. So I put in roughly the same amount of work, but I'd underestimated it. And I ended up failing it the first time that I took it. So then I took it more seriously the second time around. And when I was studying for it that second time, school had restarted again, the fall semester. And so it was a little bit tougher. But again, just days, nights, weekends, whenever I had time, I'd put in maybe like 20 hours a week or so. And maybe about a month after I failed it the first time, I went and took it again, and I was able to pass that second time around. And then the third exam, I don't know, maybe that one's the most difficult in the sense that I'd had 0 exposure to the information in it beforehand, but it's the smallest amount of information out of the 3 exams. So that one is really not too tough. You just need to read Treasury Circular 230 and read through all the IRS guidelines about representing taxpayers and ethics and such. And you should be able to pass that with a little bit of effort. It's not too bad. Not when I passed the first try.
So let's talk about the AGC here for a second. That's how I got connected with you. You mind sharing, what the AGC is and what your experience has been like with it thus far?
Oh, it's been fantastic. I think part of the reason why I was able to start my own firm out of school and do reasonably well since is because I've always tried to do everything I can to surround myself with people who are smarter than I am. And this is just
That's good advice.
The AGC is just another example of me trying to do that, right? So I'd done that in our San Diego FPA chapter. I'd done that in XY Planning Network, in one-off meetings that I had with everybody who would answer my calls, our local NAPFA chapter, reading information published by financial planners all over the place. I just tried to surround myself with people who were ahead of where I was. And the AGC is just another way of doing that. And it's also nice to just hang out with other people who are going through the same types of issues that I am and thinking about the same things and encountering the same roadblocks along the way. So I'm always happy to try and get involved with other folks and also do what I can to pay it forward. I mean, I recognize that I've had a tremendous amount of help from other people, and I try and do whatever I can to help others that are on the same journey.
So entrepreneurship, you kind of mentioned right brain, left brain. You like kind of being creative and a business owner. Like, what do you think it takes to succeed as an entrepreneur owning your own firm? And are you also, do you gravitate naturally towards other people that are kind of like that too?
Yeah, I think I've always had an interest in self-employment. I mean, even as a kid, there were a bunch of examples growing up long before the military where I'd just always been interested in kind of taking my own path there.
Yeah.
So like maybe a couple examples that come to mind would be like when I was in high school, I had a few friends that were in a band and they would do shows in like garages and basements and stuff. And I remember sometimes it would get really hot inside those shows. You pack a whole bunch of teenagers into a basement in the summer, it gets hot there. So I would just go to the store beforehand, buy a few cases of water and sell them for like a couple dollars a piece at the entrance.
Nice.
I would just think to do that. Or like when I was a kid, I lived in for a while in this apartment complex that was right up next to a golf course. Golfers would hit balls through the chain link fence. I'd gather them all up and I would start figuring out which balls are worth more, and I'd sell them to golfers that were coming by through the fence there. Or when I was, what else? Even younger than that, when I was maybe 6, 7, 8 years old, something like that, I was going to a school that in order to get there, I had to walk across this long, this big field. And growing up in the Chicago area in the wintertime, it snows a whole lot, kind of like you guys there in Michigan, you get plenty of snow. And there would be tons of geese there, and the geese would just poop all over the place. And you couldn't really see where they had pooped all over because the snow had fallen. But I would figure out a route that was clear, like a clear pathway. And I would charge kids some of their lunch money to help them find a clean path through so that their boots wouldn't get all messy on the way to school.
Oh my goodness.
So all kinds of things like that. I've just always been sort of driven and wanting to find my own way there. And that's partly why when I graduated school, like I said, it just felt like the natural, obvious choice for me to go ahead and start my own firm instead of working for somebody else's, because I knew that I would end up doing that anyway. And I figured if I'm going to end up working in my own firm, I might as well just do that from the beginning, as long as I have the ability to reach out to other people for help when I encounter roadblocks along the way. And that's been one great thing about this profession, this career field overall, is that it's very clear there are a ton of people who are willing to provide whatever support they can.
So when you're not busy being a financial planner, what do you like to do? What occupies your time when you're not working?
Out of my non-work time, probably 99% is hanging out with kids. I've got two very little ones. My daughter is 4 and my son is, 11, almost 11 months now. My daughter was born actually right around the time I launched my firm in August of 2016. So I graduated, finished registration, CFP exam, and daughter born all over like 3 months. So they take up all my time. And I love being a dad. It's really cool having young kids, even if it is very tiring at times.
Yeah. How do you find your balance? Like, are you pretty good at just managing your own schedule and being self-disciplined, or is that something you had to work on?
I would say I'm not very good at it, but I've gotten much better. And I recognize that it's something I need to continually try to improve at, because failing to do so leads to some real problems. And I think you asked earlier about sales being a challenge when I launched my own firm. It certainly was. And I expected that would be one of my biggest problems as I started my own firm. And I expected that to be one of the hardest things. And there were several other things that I expected to be really hard that did end up being fairly hard, like developing a great process to take people through, or having the confidence to know that I'm giving good advice to clients, or doing everything related to compliance that I had zero experience with. Those were all hard, but the hardest thing was something that I hadn't really anticipated before I started, which is just learning to manage myself effectively. Realizing that, okay, I've got 500 different things that I can be working on right now, 400 of which all seem really important, but I've only got X amount of time. So what are the most important things for me to focusing on right now? And how do I make sure that I have the energy and the focus to get those things done? And that's been the biggest challenge by far, more than the other areas that I had expected to actually be hard. And so I think over the last 4.5 years I've been running this little firm, that's been where I've had the most growth and where I've paid a lot of conscious attention to trying to improve, is managing myself and my time and getting much better at figuring out what actually is important right now. What are the key goals that we're trying to work towards? Ignore everything else. And every action that I take, is it getting me one step closer to what I said was the most important thing to do right now? And that's been a challenge that's constant as we've gone through that initial phase of, okay, I have 0 clients and I don't know what the heck I'm doing. How do we get this thing started? Up through building up to a few dozen clients on my own and starting to feel like I was kind of getting into my groove as a financial planner. And then that next phase of growing the team by a few people and learning to help them become better financial planners. Every stage of the way, that's been the case, that I'm constantly trying to reevaluate, what am I focusing on right now? Is this actually the most important thing? And am I pushing away everything that detracts me from it?
Wow. So how did you, I guess, get so coordinated on this? I mean, did you learn this from your time in the Marines? Did you do some reading? Did you have good mentors around you who asked this stuff, or did you just think, deeply about this?
All of the above.
Nice.
Literally all of the above. Yeah. I think part of it is just probably the single most important thing going through each of those areas you just mentioned is just paying conscious attention, like developing greater self-awareness about where am I right now? Where do I want to be? And what am I trying to become? Like, I think being a small business owner is really about self-development over time, like personal improving yourself. And to the extent that you're able to do that, I think your business is going to be more successful. And more importantly, you're going to be a lot happier in your work and in your life. So conscious self-awareness is the single most important factor there, I think. Just recognize when you're doing something that is good and reward yourself, feel grateful for it, or recognize when you're doing something that is bad and don't beat yourself up about it. Just recognize it and think about what can I be doing next.
Oh, love it. Love it. So in closing here, what advice would you give to college students, new advisors, entering the workforce? Anything that you found particularly important? What's some advice you'd like to give?
I guess the first thing that comes to mind is just what I mentioned earlier about always try and surround yourself with people who are smarter than you are. That's been the single most helpful thing for me. And I'm continuing to try and do that. Maybe another thing that comes to mind is that you have to be kind of easy on yourself and realize that no matter how good you are, no matter how hard you're working, it just takes time as well. Like there's the old saying about you can't get 9 women together and have them make a baby in 1 month, right? You have to, some of these things just take time to be able to get done. Yeah. And I think that developing a financial planning firm or building up a book of business as an individual advisor or building up your expertise over time is that same way. It just takes time. So don't be too hard on yourself. You do need to make consistent and persistent effort. It pays off, but it's not going to pay off immediately overnight. So you can never stop learning and progressing. I think we have a responsibility to our clients and to ourselves to do everything we can to further develop our expertise, so that we're having a bigger impact on people. And also so you're more confident in the advice that you're giving to people as well. And always keep the client's best interest in mind. I think that's another critical component here is regardless of what type of firm you're at, what services and products they offer, what the compensation structure is, just in any environment, always try and do what you can to keep the client's best interest in mind. And that's going to take you a long way as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
If you liked what you just heard, please like, comment, and share. This is Vincent Pacillo, producer of the MSUWMA podcast. MSUWMA, or Michigan State University Wealth Management Association, is a student organization part of the Eli Broad College of Business located in East Lansing, Michigan. Our mission is to inspire and educate the next generation of financial planners. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please check out our channel on all platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcast. And check out our social media at MSUWMA and MSUWMA.com.